the hidden power of the loner that you can't ignore. Most people fear being alone. They see solitude as emptiness, as isolation, as something to be avoided at all costs. We live in a world that celebrates connection, that rewards those who are constantly surrounded by people, that makes us believe we are only valuable if we are liked, followed, validated by the crowd. But what if everything you've been told about loneliness is wrong? What if solitude isn't a weakness but a hidden power? One so rare, so misunderstood that only a few ever learn to wield it. Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary Japanese swordsman, understood this better than anyone. He lived as a lone warrior, never tying himself to a school, a master, or a group. He rejected the comforts of companionship to sharpen his mind, his skills, his philosophy. And because of that, he became unstoppable. He won over 60 duels, many of them against opponents who outnumbered him, who had the backing of entire schools and traditions. Yet, Musashi, the lone wolf, always prevailed. How? Because he understood something his enemies did not. The path to mastery is walked alone.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
But here's the thing. We don't live in feudal Japan. We're not dueling with swords, so why does this matter to you? Because the world hasn't changed as much as you think. The principles that Musashi lived by, the power of solitude, the discipline of the loner, the strength of the independent mind, still apply today, and they might be the exact thing you need to unlock your full potential. Think about it. How often do you let the opinions of others dictate your actions? How much of your time is spent trying to fit in, to be accepted, to seek approval? How often do you silence your true thoughts, your true ambitions, just to avoid standing out? This is the trap. Society pushes you to conform, to follow trends, to think like the group, but the loner, the one who steps away from the noise, who learns to stand alone, sees things differently. They are not distracted by external expectations. They are not bound by the limitations of the crowd. And because of that, they develop a level of clarity, focus, and strength that most people will never experience. Musashi wrote the Book of 5 Rings, a guide not just for combat but for life itself. In it he speaks of strategy, of discipline, of the mindset required to be truly great, and at the core of his philosophy is one simple truth: depend on no one. Not for validation, not for guidance, not for strength, because the moment you need others to define you, you have already lost. But let's be clear, this is not about rejecting human connection. It's not about isolating yourself out of fear or bitterness. True solitude is not loneliness. It's not about cutting yourself off from the world. It's about choosing to stand on your own, to build yourself into someone who does not rely on external approval, who does not fear being alone with their own thoughts. It's about developing an inner world so strong, so unshakable, that no outside force can break you. Look at history. The greatest thinkers, the greatest warriors, the greatest creators, they all had moments of deep solitude. Nietzsche, Einstein, Da Vinci, all of them understood the necessity of stepping away from the crowd, of entering a space where their ideas could form without interference, because that's where real breakthroughs happen. Not in the noise, not in the chaos of constant distraction, but in the silence of solitude. So ask yourself, when was the last time you were truly alone? Not just physically, but mentally. When was the last time you sat with your own thoughts, without reaching for your phone, without drowning yourself in entertainment, without seeking someone else's opinion? If you can't remember, then you might be missing one of the greatest sources of power available to you. Because here's the truth. The loner is not weak. The loner is not lost. The loner is the one who sees the world for what it really is, who understands themselves without the distortion of external influence, who moves through life with a clarity that others can only dream of. And if you can learn to embrace that, if you can learn to step away from the need for constant validation, if you can learn to stand alone without fear, then you will unlock a strength that is nearly unstoppable. Why society fears the loner, and why that's exactly where your power lies. Society does not reward the loner. It fears them. It pushes against them. It tries to break them, not because they are weak, but because they are unpredictable. The loner does not follow trends, they do not seek approval, they do not move with the herd. And that is terrifying to a world that thrives on conformity. From the moment we are born, we are conditioned to seek acceptance. In school, we are taught to fit in, to follow rules, to behave in ways that make us more likable. In work, we are told to be team players, to blend into company culture, to prioritize relationships over independent thought. Even in our personal lives, social media has turned existence into a performance, where our worth is measured by likes, comments, and followers. The message is clear. Those who belong are rewarded. Those who stand alone are cast aside. But why? Why is solitude treated like a sickness, something to be cured rather than cultivated? The answer is simple. A person who does not need the approval of the group is dangerous. They cannot be controlled. They cannot be manipulated. They cannot be influenced by peer pressure, by trends, or by the fear of rejection. The loner operates on a different frequency, one that is immune to the psychological traps that keep most people obedient. This is why history's greatest disruptors were often loners. Buddha left the palace to seek enlightenment in solitude. Nietzsche spent years in isolation, refining his philosophy. Musashi wandered alone, rejecting the schools of traditional swordsmanship in favor of his own path. These were not men who feared being alone. They embraced it. They understood that true power does not come from being accepted. It comes from being untouchable. But here's the paradox. While society rejects the loner, it also admires them. We idolize the lone warrior, the self-made genius, the independent thinker. We celebrate those who defy the odds, who carve their own path, who refuse to bow to the expectations of others. Why? Because deep down we know that is where true strength lies. We know that the person who does not need the approval of others is free in a way that most of us are not. And that's what makes the loner so powerful. They do not operate from a place of fear. They do not fear being misunderstood. They do not fear rejection. They do not fear standing alone. While most people are desperate to belong, to be liked, to be accepted, the loner moves through the world with a quiet confidence, knowing that their worth is not determined by external validation. But here's the challenge. Can you embrace that mindset? Can you step away from the need to be liked, to be understood, to be accepted by people who do not see your vision? Can you walk your own path, even when it means walking alone? Because if you can, you will unlock a level of freedom that most people will never experience. Most people live in fear of standing apart. They are terrified of being different, of being judged, of not fitting in. But the truth is, fitting in has never led to greatness. No one who changed the world did so by following the crowd. No one who became a master did so by seeking constant validation. No one who achieved true self-mastery did so by fearing solitude. So ask yourself, are you living for yourself, or are you living for the approval of others? Are your thoughts truly your own, or are they shaped by the expectations of those around you? Are you willing to embrace solitude, to use it as a tool for growth, for clarity, for strength? Or will you spend your life chasing acceptance from people who do not even understand themselves? Because here's the truth, the loner is feared not because they are weak, but because they are strong. Strong enough to stand alone, strong enough to think for themselves, strong enough to move through the world without needing permission. And if you can embrace that strength, if you can learn to depend on no one but yourself, then there is no limit to what you can achieve. The Way of Musashi, how to cultivate the mindset of the lone warrior. Miyamoto Musashi did not become a legend by accident. He was not born into greatness, nor was he handed power. He built himself from nothing. He walked alone, not because he had no choice, but because he understood something that most people never will. Solitude is the crucible of mastery. In the silence, in the stillness, in the absence of distraction, a person can forge themselves into something unstoppable. But the path is not easy. It demands discipline, focus, and an unshakable will. The question is, do you have what it takes to walk it? The first step to cultivating the mindset of the lone warrior is understanding that solitude is not isolation. Most people confuse the two. They think being alone means being lonely, that stepping away from society means being disconnected. But true solitude is not about cutting yourself off from the world, it's about learning to exist without needing it. It's about developing a mind so strong, so independent, that you are never truly alone because you are enough. This is the foundation of Musashi's philosophy, self-sufficiency in all things. But self-sufficiency is not just about survival, it's about mastery. Musashi did not just train with a sword, he trained his mind, his body, his spirit. He understood that to be truly powerful, one must cultivate every aspect of the self. Most people focus on one thing, their career, their relationships, their physical strength, but they neglect the rest. The lone warrior does not make this mistake. They sharpen their intellect, they strengthen their body, they refine their emotions, they discipline their desires. They become whole, not dependent on any single skill, any single person, any single outcome. They are prepared for anything, and preparation is everything. Musashi believed that a warrior must always be ready, not just for battle, but for life. Most people react to the world. They wait for things to happen, and then they scramble to adjust. But the lone warrior anticipates. They see the patterns before they unfold. They understand human nature, strategy, the flow of events. They are not caught off guard because they have trained themselves to see beyond the immediate moment. They do not live in fear because they are always prepared, and that preparation gives them power. But power means nothing without control. Musashi was not just a fighter, he was a master of discipline. He did not waste energy on things that did not serve his purpose. He did not indulge in distractions, in petty conflicts, in emotional weakness. He moved through life with precision, with intention, cutting away anything that did not align with his path. This is perhaps the hardest lesson for most people to learn. We live in a world of endless distractions, entertainment, social media, pointless arguments, superficial desires. Most people spend their lives chasing things that do not matter, wasting time on things that weaken them. The lone warrior does not. They protect their focus, they guard their energy, they refine their purpose. And that purpose is everything. Musashi did not just wander aimlessly, he had a path, a goal, a driving force that shaped every decision he made. Without purpose, solitude is meaningless. Without purpose, discipline is empty. This is where most people fail. They try to cultivate the mindset of the lone warrior, but they have no direction. They isolate themselves, but they do not use that isolation to grow. They remove distractions, but they do not replace them with discipline. They step away from the crowd, but they do not step toward anything greater. So ask yourself, what is your purpose? What are you building? What are you sharpening yourself for? Because without an answer, solitude will break you instead of strengthening you. Without an answer, you will not be a warrior, you will just be alone. And that is the final truth of Musashi's way. Solitude is not the goal, it is the tool. The world romanticizes the lone warrior, the mysterious figure who walks alone, but few understand what that truly means. It is not about rejecting society for the sake of it. It is not about being different just to be different. It is about forging yourself into something so strong, so refined, so disciplined that you do not need the approval, the validation, the support of others to succeed. It is about becoming unstoppable, not because you are isolated, but because you are complete. So the question is, are you ready to walk that path? Are you ready to embrace the solitude not as an escape, but as a forge? Are you ready to step away from the distractions, the noise, the endless cycle of validation seeking, and truly build yourself? Because if you are, then you are already ahead of most people. Most will never take this step. Most will remain dependent, distracted, controlled by their need to belong. But a few, a rare few, will walk the way of Musashi. And those few will change everything. The unbreakable mind, how the loner becomes stronger than the crowd. There is a hidden strength that only the loner possesses, a kind of resilience that cannot be developed in the noise of the crowd. It is forged in silence, in discipline, in the relentless refinement of the self. Those who move with the herd never develop it because they have never had to. They lean on others for comfort, for validation, for identity. But the loner, by choice or by circumstance, must face themselves, and in that confrontation they either break or they become unbreakable. The mind of the loner is different. It does not seek constant stimulation. It is not afraid of stillness. It does not need the endless chatter of others to feel whole. Instead, it thrives in solitude, sharpening itself against the edge of deep thought, of self-reflection, of unfiltered reality. Most people cannot handle this. They run from silence because in silence, they are forced to face the truth of who they are. They drown themselves in distractions, social media, meaningless conversations, endless entertainment, because they fear what will happen if they are left alone with their own thoughts. But the loner embraces this. They step into the quiet, not with fear, but with purpose. They use it to understand themselves, to master their emotions, to refine their vision. And that mastery makes them dangerous. The world operates on emotional reactions. People are easily manipulated by fear, by anger, by the need to belong. They are driven by impulse, by the opinions of others, by the pressure to conform. But the loner is immune to this. They do not react, they respond. They do not follow trends, they observe them. They do not seek approval, they move with intent. This is why true power has always belonged to those who can stand alone. They see what others do not. They are not swayed by fleeting emotions or external pressure. Their strength comes from within, and because of that, it cannot be taken away. But this strength does not come easily. It is built through struggle, through loss, through the difficult process of detaching from the need for external validation. Most people never achieve it because they are unwilling to endure the discomfort required to develop it. They want to be strong, but they do not want to be tested. They want to be independent, but they fear being misunderstood. They want to be different, but they are terrified of standing apart. The loner, however, has already walked through this fire. They have faced rejection, isolation, doubt. They have learned to live without constant reassurance, without the safety net of the group. And in doing so, they have discovered something most people never will: the ability to rely entirely on themselves. This is why the loner becomes stronger than the crowd. The crowd gives people an illusion of strength, but in reality, it weakens them. It teaches them to lean on others, to avoid conflict, to seek comfort over growth. It rewards obedience, not originality. It punishes those who think for themselves. But the loner is not burdened by these constraints. They do not need permission to act. They are not held back by the fear of judgment. They do not wait for others to validate their path. They simply move forward, relentlessly, unshaken by the doubts and insecurities that hold most people back. But, here's the final truth: being a loner is not about rejecting the world. It is not about bitterness or resentment. It is about strength. It is about developing a mind that is so clear, so disciplined, so self-sufficient that you can engage with the world on your own terms. The greatest leaders, the greatest thinkers, the greatest warriors, they did not isolate themselves out of hatred for others. They did it because they knew that to truly master life, they first had to master themselves. And that kind of mastery can only be achieved in solitude. So ask yourself, are you willing to walk this path? Are you willing to step away from the noise, to cultivate your own mind, to build a foundation of strength that does not rely on others? Are you willing to endure discomfort, misunderstanding, even loneliness in order to become something greater? Because if you are, then you have already taken the first step toward an unbreakable mind. Most people will never take that step. They will remain trapped in the cycle of seeking approval, of fearing solitude, of avoiding the hard truths that come with self-examination. But a few, a rare few, will embrace the path of the lone warrior, and those few will shape the world.